Hello students, coming to Java programming course. Currently we are at Unit 3, Chapter 3, Interfaces. And I told you that this interface chapter of Unit 3 composed in 3 videos, video 10, video 11, video 12. Currently we are at video 11. And these are the topics we are going to discuss in this video of Chapter 3, Interfaces. The first one, accessing implementation through reference of interface. Generally, we know that interfaces are not give any implementations of the methods defined in it. Whatever the classes that are going to be implement these interfaces, they can implement these methods defined in interface on their own. And those implementations can access through interface references. And we know that interface generally reference variables of a class can access the objects of the or can assign to that subclass objects can assign to the superclass reference. That this topic was already covered and we are familiar with that concept. And this is similar to that. Second one, multiple interfaces. And third topic we are going to discuss today is nested interfaces. First topic, accessing implementations through interface references. So in this topic, and the process of this accessing implementations through interface reference is similar to using the concept we process in the classes. A superclass can reference to access a subclass object. And the same way, we're going to discuss this process in similar to this one. And we can declare variables as object references that use an interface rather than a class type. So here, generally these variables we can use to refer the objects of the classes. And in inheritance point of view, a superclass reference variable reference to access the subclass objects. The same way here, the importance given to the declare variable as object references, and generally that use an interface rather than the class type. That it means it acts as an interface to particular where it is referring right now, and not much importance to the class type. And next one is any type instance of any class that implements the declared interface can be referred by such a variable. That it means when we are going to define a reference of a existing interface, and that any class can instance of this any class that implements the declared interface can be referred to by such classes or such variables. So that variable can refer to any object that the class implements that interface. That reference of a interface can refer to the any object implements of the class object implements the interface. Next point, when you call a method through one of these references, remember this one. When you call a method through one of these references, the correct version will be called based on the actual instance of the interface being referred to. So here it is the point need to be understand. When we call a method through one of these references of an interfaces, and the correct version will be called based on the actual instance of the interface being referred to. Consider the scenario like when an interface is defined, one class implements that interface. That reference variable of that interface can call the methods defined by the class that implements that interface. And I will show you this point clearly in the example program. And this is the one of the key feature of the interfaces. See here, before going to this example, see when generally we invoke methods in Java and normal methods, and we compare that methods based on the object referring to the class members. But whenever coming to the polymorphism, at runtime, generally dynamic lookup of a method at runtime. When we invoke the method and the compiler will invoke that method based on the reference at runtime, and it creates some overhead at that runtime generally. So by using this reference of interfaces or media classes, usually this can be overcome in the Java program executions, right? You see here to understand the concept, we accessing implementations through interface references. So here I have an interface as call. Call is an interface defined here in this program. And here a method called hello is defined in interface, and here it is an abstract method and no body implementation given by this interface. Then whereas coming to this class client one, this is going to implement the call interface using implements keyword, okay. And when this client one class implements this interface, the condition is the method defined inside interface that should be implemented on the client one class on their one implementation. So it is defined this hello method in client's class on their own implementation, saying it is displaying using system.out.println statement hello khid. This is the method implementation defined for hello defined in the interface, right? And in parallel, right, in addition to that, this client one class has another member method called hi. And this method, when it invokes, it displaying on the screen hi khid using system.out.println. Okay, this is the behaviors of this interface call and the class that implements that interface client one. Okay, coming to the main class test one. Inside this main function, I'm creating a reference variable C. Now see here, it is a reference variable of interface C. Call is an interface name followed by understood. This is very important. This is the concept we are going to discuss. We are discussing about the concepts of this accessing implementation to reference variable. This is the key step. Interface name followed by reference name, reference variable. Now C is an reference of an interface, and we are assigning this reference to a client class one, client class objects, right? Client one class objects. So see here, by using this new operator, we are creating memory for the object of this client one, and this object reference is assigned to this reference variable of the interface. So now we can allow to call this method defined by the client class, that the method defined in the interface. And while implementing the inheritance between this interface and class client one, the method defined in the interface should be implemented by this class client one, right? So here, so this reference variable is used to access the method defined in the class client one, that is hello, right? This hello. So c dot hello, as it is allowed to call that method. Why? Because that interface reference assigned to this class object called client one. So the method defined in the interface and implemented that method in the class, so that reference variable can allow to access this method and simply display on the screen like executing this hello class, that is hello khid. But whereas another point we are going to refer, this is the concept that assigning implementations through reference interface references. But whereas coming to here, when we are trying to access the another member method defined in the class client1 through this interface reference C, is it possible or not? So it is completely not allowed in Java. It gives compile error because that C dot high is the local method defined in the class, whereas this interface reference variable can only know the knowledge of the methods defined in the interface, and that methods are implemented in the classes, that are the classes implement that interface. So this is the 2 points to be clear in this by this example program. Okay, shall we move on to the execution part of this one? So coming to test one, remember the class name is test one. Yeah, this is the same program we just seen in the PPT. So first I'm going to remove this line commands to get an error about this case, then later we execute. Okay, and I'm saving this one, save, and come to the command prompt. Yeah, here it is going to execute test1 test1.java. So simply it gives an error that c.high is a variable C of type call. C is a variable of type call, so it cannot find the symbol of this high method. So this high method is a local method to class, not an interface. That's why this reference variable not identifying this method and not accessing that class member local method. Okay, then move on to the program and change given to this. Just give the comment lines for ignoring this statement and save and go to command prompt and execute the same. Just one. As it is, not giving any errors, then executes, then it simply execute that hello method, hello khid. Got it? So this is the scenario about the accessing implementations through interface reference, and we'll see some more. Got it? Okay, coming to the actual explanation part of the previous program, notice that that variable C is declared to be the interface type call. Call is an interface, and it was assigned an instance of client1. Yes, client1 object is assigned, or client1 object memory is assigned to the reference of this interface call, that is C. Got it? Although C can be used to access hello method, it cannot access any other members of the client1 class. It cannot access, right? Next one, an interface reference variable only has knowledge of the methods declared by its interface declaration. Whatever the declaration given in interface, that is hello method here, and these methods will implement in the classes which implements this interface. Okay, and this reference variable has only the knowledge of those methods only, and not other local methods defined by the classes. And this C could not be used to access high method, since it is defined by client1 but not call. Call is an interface. So this is the points to be remember when we are going to apply the concept like accessing implementations through interface references. So coming to the another version of this one. So even though I want to that method, like something. So coming to this example also, see here, So this is interface call having hello method. So class client1 implements interface call. And here this client1 implementing this hello method on its own saying hello phid. Okay, this is call. Then another class is there client2. It also implements the call interface. And this client2 class going to implement this hello on its own implementation, saying here hello CSC. So client one implementing the hello method as hello khit, client two implementing the hello method defined in interface as hello CSC. Coming to the main class, in main method, we are creating a reference variable for interface class call and allocating object of this client one, reference of this interface of the instance of this class one. And here c dot hello, it is a valid statement, right? Here which hello method will invoke here? The class client one. The client one method hello is invoked at this step of execution. Then it simply display on the screen hello khit. Next one, I'm using the same, I want to use the same reference interface reference value to call the client2 object, client2 method hello. Then you can do this step happily. Create an object of this client2 x equal to new client2. Here it is the step defining that, declaring or defining an object of this client2 class. So this step is important here. C equal to x. So now we are assigning client2 object to a reference variable of interface. Then c dot hello. Here this client2 hello method will invoke here at this step and it executes the statement like hello CSC. So this is also one type of variation using this interface reference to access the implementations of the classes or the methods of defined in the interface. And here the version of hello that is called is determined. And this hello method we are two times invoking using interface reference, and that is determined by the type of object that variable C refers to at runtime. At runtime, which class object instance is referred to by this interface reference variable. Then based on that, the method can be invoked. Got it? And we will go to this execution part. So coming to the program file, I have saved it test2.java. Then come to execute. Go to command prompt. So coming to command prompt here, so Java 2 dot Java C test2.java, no errors. Then execute this one, Java test2. So both methods are invoked by the interface reference variable one by one. Hello khit is the client one method hello, and hello CSC is the method invoked by method of client2 class. Okay. Next, coming to the concept, sometimes we may use this partial implementations in generally in Java programs. See here, if a class includes an interface but does not fully implement the methods. Remember this point, sometimes you may get interview type of question like this. If a class includes an interface, that it means when a class implements any existing interface but does not fully implement. But the condition is when the class implements an interface, that should implement all the method defined by the interface. But here this class does not fully implement the methods defined by that interface that is allowed in Java programs. Okay. But that class must be declared as abstract. Then only this point will be valid in Java implementation. So example, here it is a class called client3 going to implement the interface defined that is called for the last two programs they are defining call interface, and client3 is a one of the class going to implement this interface call, but that don't want to implement that hello method defined by this interface call. So then this class can be defined and declared as an abstract class. Then this class allowed to implement its own methods, not the methods of the interface defined, methods defined in the interface. Okay, here it is having two local instance variables and void show method is displaying the values. So based on this behavior, if you observe here, there is no implementation of the method defined in the interface call. So here the class client3 does not implement hello and must be declared as abstract. Then only it is allowed, but otherwise it is not allowed. Okay, but here one more additional point there about this client class, client3. Any class, any other class that inherits the client3, that it means any other class is going to extend the properties of client3 as usual in inheritance, must implement hello method. Must implement hello method. Why? Because this client3 is a subclass to this interface. Then whatever the other classes extending this or inheriting this client3, that classes must be implement this hello method into their scopes. So this is very important condition. Otherwise, if that subclasses are not interested to implement those methods of interface or any other type of issues, then or simply declare them as abstract classes. That it may be declared abstract itself. Then no need to implement those methods like that, right? But generally the case is when you are implementing interfaces for the purpose of implementing the methods defined in the interface. Okay, but this is one of the concept. Remember that as partial implementations. Okay. Next one, the next concept is multiple interfaces. So multiple interface, thus this one is already everyone know. Multiple inheritance in Java does not support by the classes. But whereas this multiple inheritance can be achieved in Java using interfaces. So here we call that concept as multiple interfaces. So here, this multiple inheritances generally nothing but, and coming to the point of view also, one interface and another interfaces, that it means the concept is related to multiple inheritance. More than one interface exists in our program, and classes are extending those interfaces at a time. That it means class is extending or implementing implementing the properties of more than one interface. That will come into that concept, right? If a class implements multiple interfaces, or an interface extends multiple interfaces. So both the points we already discussed. And once again, we see this diagrammatic approach. So consider a class wants to implement two interfaces at a time. That it means exist interface one properties and interface two properties going to implement by single class. So here it uses the word or implements keyword. Whereas coming to the interface, when it is going to implement the other existing interfaces in your class. So here that implementation is not a suitable word for saying this word. you must say about extends. So here extends is the keyword used by one interface to extend the properties of interface. An interface can only extend the properties of other interfaces. But whereas coming to the class point of view, class can implement the properties of inheritance interface, right? I hope you got the points clearly without any confusion. Coming to the example program. So here printable is a one interface having method called print. Okay. And another interface showable having method defined by this showable is show method. Whereas coming to one class called A7, which implements both the interfaces, printable and showable. That's why in the declaration of this class A7, we just separated these two interfaces using comma operator, right? By separated by comma. And this class A7 now can allow to extend or can allow to inherit the properties of this printable and showable. And this class must and should implement the methods defined by these two interfaces. So that's why inside of this class 7, A7, print method is implemented on its own and show method is implemented by this class A7 on its own implementation. Free to declare these or implement these methods, right? So this is the behavior of this class A7, right? These two methods implementation is mandatory for this A7, class A7, right? Coming to the main class test3. So inside this main function, we just instantiated this A7 class, that it mean of created one object of this A7 class. And using this A7 class, we are accessing that print method and show method defined in its class scope. So both are valid statement. It simply display on the screen print method saying hello and show method saying welcome. Hello, welcome. So both statement displayed on the screen like this. Got it? Understood? This is called multiple inheritance or multiple interfaces exist in our program. One class extending at a time two interface properties. Going to the implementation part of this too. So test 3. Yes, this is the program 5. I have saved this as test3.java. Go to the console, command prompt for executing this one. So what is the file name? 3. So Java C test3.java. Is there any errors? No errors, then execute this using Java command. As it is. Hello and welcome. Clear? Very simple programs. And the concept behind this taking simple examples is to understand the concept well. And don't we think that this is exactly the programs used for this multiple inheritance. In real time, we will use these concepts to implement solutions to the complex programs, not for this type of simple programs. For your learning point of view, understanding point of view, we have taken these simple examples. Here the concept is this class A7 implements the properties of two interfaces to achieve this multiple interface. That is the point need to be understand in this concept. Okay. Next one, coming to the another example, another multiple interface example. Coming to this another example, see the variation. Again, it is a printable interface here and print method, but showable interface again having the same method type here, same method type and method name also. So when two interfaces exist like this, same the class A7 is going to implement both the interfaces printable and showable. Then in the previous example, the mandatory condition is the methods defined by these two interfaces must and should be implemented in the class scope. The same way when we use this print method two times, so it gives a compile error. So here the concept is no need to implement the method type and name same defined by these two interfaces. Only once implementation is enough, not two times, not enough. Okay. Coming to the test class, can just do the same instantiating about this A7 class, creating object like and calling print method. But actually this program gives an error and I will show you as an example pointer. Test 4, see here printable having print method, showable having print method, and we have defined these two methods twice. I'm going to execute. Okay. Coming to command prompt here, so execute that Java 4 program as it is. When it is executed, simply gives error that is method print is already defined in class A7 and twice is not allowed. Even though the two interfaces having the same type signature methods and in the classes which implements these interfaces, only once implementation is enough for these methods. Okay, got it this point? Now coming to the change of this one. So now the same consideration, printable having print method, showable interface having print method, and A7 implementing both printable and showable. And here it is only once this print method is defined by this class A7, not twice. So simply it's saying hello. So doing the same, creating an object of this class A7, and through that object we are invoking that print method. As it is valid, this print method will invoke and execute it, simply display on the screen hello. Got it? So go to the execution part of this one. So this is the program of this test 5 class. Okay, go and execute a command prompt. Test5.java. So it's simply executed without errors. Then run this test5 class code. Then it simply display on the screen hello. Got it? Clear the point? Good. Okay, point is clear. Next one. So coming to the next topic is nested interfaces. Nested means defining one interfaces inside of another interface. That we call that nested interface. So coming to here, okay, an interface can be declared a member of class or another interface. That means you can define one new interface into the scope of existing class or another interface. Such an interface is called a member of interface or a nested interface. Member in interface or nested interface. A nested interface can be declared as any type, like public you can use, privately you can declare, or protected you can declare, right? And we know these access specifications or modifiers very well, how to use these access specifications and when to access these methods or a members of a class or an interface in program situations. The nested interface must be referred by the outer interface or class. This point is not new for us. This is already learned in the concept called nested classes. And inner class methods or whatever cannot be accessed directly outside of those classes, outer classes. We can simply refer those nested classes or nested interfaces. Here the point is nested interfaces through the outer interfaces only or outer classes only, where these interfaces are defined in the scope, right? So it cannot be accessed directly. And we will see these points clearly in the example program. So coming to here, I have an interface showable with show method, and inside of this scope showable, this is the scope of this showable interface. And inside of this scope, I have an interface called message. Clear? This message interface is now inside of another interface called showable. Then we call this message interface as a nested interface. So here in this nested interface, one more message is defined here, that is message. Message, okay. Coming to this class test6. So test6 is a class name which is implementing right now the nested interface, that is inner interface defined in the showable, that is this message. So how to represent that message interface is going to implement by this test6 class. So that should be accessed only through outer class, outer interface name. So this is outer interface showable with dot operator only. With dot operator only, we can access this inner interface defined in the showable scope. Okay. So showable dot message. So this is the syntax to access this interface to implement by this test6 class. So this class implementing the properties of message interface, not showable. So that's why it simply implemented the method defined in the message interface, not show method, right? So this message interface in message method, so it's simply displaying the statement like hello nested interface, hello nested interface. And coming to the main method of this test6 class, so I'm creating one reference variable MSSG. So how can you refer this one? Showable dot message, outer interface name dot inner interface name, and equal to new operator and assigning this reference variable to the instance of test6 class, that nothing but object. So this is called upcasting concept here. So here we are doing, and I am calling or invoking that method message defined in test6 class through this interface reference variable. This is the topic we learned in the first topic of this video. Okay, mssg.msg. As it is valid, we can refer this class objects through interface references that implemented by this test6 class. So it's simply display on the screen, hello nested interface. Okay, coming to the execution part of this one. Test6. Yes, this is the program same as taken from the PPT and the example. So coming to execution part, command prompt, go to command prompt, right? Let's clear the screen now. Test6, right? Test6. Java say test6.java. No errors. Then execute test6. Hello nested interface. Got it? The point is very simple here, and this can be considered as a nested interface. So coming to the another simple example to better understanding of this nested interface, right? So now in the previous example, we have taken that one interface is defined in another interface. Here the example is one interface is defined in class, not an interface. So here one interface is defined in one existing class. So here the same class A and the interface message defined in the scope of this class A and has one message. Here one test class 7 is implementing this message interface of defined in the class A. The same way class name followed by dot operator and followed by interface name. And this class implements this interface. So this method should be implemented on its own here in this class code. So this method MSG is implemented in this test7 class and it's simply displaying hello nested interface. And coming to the public method, public static void main method of this test7 class, one reference variable is created, the same class name dot interface name reference variable, and assigning this referred to by test7 instance, nothing but object. Okay, casting here and calling the message defined in the test7 class to the reference variable of that interface. So here it is valid. So it can be executed like this, hello nested interface. Before going to the execution part here, let's see how can we define an interface inside the class and how can we access it. Yes, learn. We can define a class inside the interface. Java compiler creates a static nested class. Okay, this is also the point to be create another program to such a type of point to clear. We can define a class inside the interface and Java compiler creates a static nested class so that it clearly consider that as a static nested class. Okay, coming to the execution part here, coming to class test7. So yeah, this is the program and go to command prompt for executing this one. This is Java C test7.java. No errors. Then execute this one. Hello nested interface. Got it? Everything is clear about these topics. And again go to and the methods, the topics we covered today. Accessing implementations through reference of interfaces and multiple interfaces for implementing multiple inheritance in Java and nested interfaces. Okay, and these are the topics, test box and reference box we used, and new resources, specifically this Java 3.com for these interfaces of examples to make you simple to understand. Thank you.